Dieter, it would be good to hear from yourself, who didn't have anything to take forward, and or had on one hand the enviable blank sheet of paper to start from scratch, but of course several countries and a lot of asset that you've got to quickly be able to monitor. So it'd be great to hear your story and how you made your decisions and the way forward you've gone this year.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned this blank piece of paper, which is also kind of let's say opportunity, right? So building a IT stack on the green field is nothing that happens to IT people a lot in their life. So we started investigations already back in the beginning of early 2019. So that was far before the Vantage Towers company was established. In the frame of the project establishing that, we early looked at the markets where we wanted to demerge the business, and we have scanned their current tool landscape that covers the tower company scope. And what we found is, and that is not a surprise, it's similar to what Diego said, of course, a real zoo of different kinds of applications, homegrown, proprietary. Also, Vodafone was grown historically, right? So, and the markets have grown their applications, etc. So it was a real zoo, and we could not identify anything that we could take forward as the blueprint for our target asset management system, a workflow management system in Vantage. On top, as it is coming from a mobile operator, let's say the systems have not only managed passive equipment, but also the active equipment, which then needs to be separated if you demerge, right? So we had the same situation. We have scanned the market intensively. And as Diego said, you have different choices. You can try to do an in-house development, really from scratch. You can decide for monolithic products that are in the market and to customize them to your needs. Or you can look at, let's say, a kind of low-code application platforms that have the basic capabilities and that you can configure to your needs. We have done an intensive research, and in the end, we decided for going with Sitetracker as offering their product on a low-code application platform, which is the Salesforce platform. And we did that because from the beginning, creating Vantage Towers, we were very clear that we want to be a digital and data-driven company. So we clearly looked at to combine, manage our inventory and assets jointly with managing our processes and workflows. So really work after workflows, and the data that is created along the workflows, having that in the same system, right? That was a bit the idea. We started off the project November 2019 with Sitetracker to roll it out in a centralized, let's say, mode. So there is one platform for all the markets, same platform for all the markets, which also means, let's say, it's not just plugging in a new tool, right? It's really a transformation project. Also, like Diego said, it's about the usual triangle of technology, people, and processes, right? And you need to look at that. It's really a transformation. It's not yet another tool, because you change the way people have worked in the past for many years, right? And also you change all the tooling. And also you need to look at the interface layer between, not technically, but from the processes between the new tower company, Vantage Towers, and its customers, also the main customer, Vodafone, right? Also that differs market by market. So it combines introduction of a new tool with a lot of people change management and especially process harmonization. That's the journey we started, as I said, in November 2019. We decided for agile implementation, and I have to say luckily, because these big transformation projects with a triangle doing in traditional waterfall, collecting requirements, delivering something after 1 or 1.5 years, that does not work anymore in this fast-paced business environment, technology environment. So we rolled out after 6 months the first minimum viable product to all markets, and since then We have then expanded the solution with use cases, with data, etc., and we plan to have it ready by summer this year. Let's say the first time implementation, as Diego said, software, as you know, is never ready. It's never finished, right? So always there are new ideas, technology changes, the services that you offer change. So you have to frequently adapt that. And this is also why we made the decision for Sitetracker, because we wanted to have a solution where we can quickly implement things and in an agile way do show and tell with the users and get early feedback whether it works or not, and then go to the next step. For this, my opinion is you need something very configurable instead of doing code customization, which sometimes can be very cumbersome.
But David, it'd be interesting to get your insight as to when, in our instance, as we're facing into 4G, we're at a peak with thousands of applications for upgrades. Our staff are feeling at the busiest, and then we tell them, I'm going to take those trackers off of my project managers that love the trackers they've built over years, and I'm going to put them into a new system. How do you think you culturally get people bought into that in the companies that you're selling to? And what would you say is a typical kind of length of period to actually go for an implementation?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The sort of landscape is moving much quicker and it's much more complex than perhaps the 4G landscape was. And I think that sort of cycle will probably just continue in the coming years. Working with Vantage for us, just shows you the complexity of 8 different operating companies, each with their own kind of view of looking at the world, and then trying to harmonize that into a single way of working. So for us, the sort of core philosophy of how we approach these types of things is what we call standardization with localization, right? So being able to build something that works for the center, that works for the sort of head office, let's say, but gives enough flexibility to the local teams that adopt or accommodate the workflows that are specific to them, because it's different enough, let's say, building a site or the permitting process in a rural part of Scotland compared to the center of London, let alone the difference between doing those 2 activities in Germany versus Greece, right? So it's all well and good that you want to create a harmonized process, but you need to be able to give the people on the ground the flexibility to sort of adapt these workflows to what they need, because otherwise what you end up doing is having a centralized tool that you think has all your data, but in reality there's a lot of rogue Excel spreadsheets that people are actually doing the work in. And then maybe every so often they're sort of uploading information into your central tool. So what you have isn't really real time or worth anything. So, the change management process, obviously you need a very committed partner, right? You need some tight deadlines to focus the minds. In Vantage's case, they were, they had IPO date and they had, some real fixed sort of timelines on the ground that were immovable, right? And we had to sort of really ensure that our teams were ramped and working hard to sort of meet those. And then, you need the right governance structure in place to get the buy-in and the collaboration with the stakeholders and set priorities, because don't forget, pick any workflow or process that you're trying to standardize. And as Diego said, you bring people from different countries together, you get them to agree, but these people all have day jobs, right? I mean, they're also tasked at the same time as the system is being implemented, they're also being tasked to actually build, X hundreds of sites or whatever, right? So you have to be empathetic to that, but also, push the customer in this case to make decisions, to stick by those decisions, to give priority, to allow these people the time to make those decisions. And then, one thing that I think we could have done a lot better, but we certainly, we build these into our implementations now, is just spending a lot more time with the users, right? Making sure that we have people that float around, trainers, and also, just what we call, as Dieter said, it was an agile implementation, but we also sort of created floating squads that could go around and, sort of help particular markets with their adoption and just, do whatever it takes to sort of make things right for them. So that's kind of the approach that we took. And in terms of timeline, it's a really difficult question to answer. I mean, I think what we did with Vantage was remarkable, right? Taking 8 countries, and trying to create a system which, as he said, first go live was within 6 months, giving people a viable product that they could start working in. And then, a year later, kind of delivering not the finished article, because software is never finished, as Dieter said, but at least a much more of a complete product, let's say, that everyone could go live in with all the integrations that they needed and so on. So that's one example of a timeline, right? We've been able to take a massive operator in North America. We were able to take them live with a system in 4 weeks. So it really depends the extent to which they're willing to take the out-of-the-box product and push that, versus the extent to which they want to make the configurations and changes to adopt to their workflow. So I think that's more the issue is what the customer is willing to do and the extent to which they're willing to work with us on that.
Certainly 4 weeks that's a sprint for sure. But
yeah, and that's just basically, here it is. This is our fiber build product, start to finish, nothing else. You get this. Everybody has to start working with it. We'll take your Excel spreadsheets, we'll replicate them. The workflows are exactly the same. Off you go. Right?
I think, if there was an IPO deadline run against us in one of these projects, that certainly focuses the mind. But a hard deadline we found was fundamental, because otherwise you kept saying, well, that looks like a nice addition, let's sandbox that, and that looks like and it's never finished. So if you don't put a deadline on it, then you will never actually get to version 1. So that was the fundamental we had. And as I mentioned earlier, we're kind of considering, what do we add to our system for, vaccinations and the data of holding that personal information. But it's what will we monitor next. So at the moment, we're looking at power, and for our desire to get to net zero carbon, we're producing that information, but how do we improve that? But also for our customers, how do we increase the efficiency of power for everyone on site? Because simply by our industry, we should be able to reduce the carbon footprint for getting the service out, and using our infrastructure helps achieve that. But we need to monitor that information, and we don't know what other things we might add onto our systems.
Yeah, of course, you can imagine in such a bigger transformation with 8 markets, I think 40 to 50 legacy tools to be migrated. So you are facing a lot of challenges, right? So maybe I share at least a few of them that I think could be valuable for others that want to undergo a similar IT transformation. So the first is, as I said before, it's this triangle, and don't underestimate the people and the process change. And the first thing we tried, as I said, in the agile mode, and that's why I think it was good, we tried to harmonize processes and workflows within this, let's say, agile creation of our tower information management system. So to combine the process and workflow harmonization with implementation into the tool, right? With some first, if you go with out of the box, have only a few configurations there, it works well. If you go into a phase where you tackle more complex processes, what we have clearly seen is this will be hardly possible to do that process and workflow transformation and the IT implementation in short agile sprints. That was a first experience, and that is the beauty of the agile mode. You can fail, but you fail fast, and the impact is not that big. So what we did then is we decided to disconnect the process creation and the workflow implementation in the IT tool. So we first created the high-level processes that we want to go through, and also with an end-to-end view, right? So we are using the Tower Information Management System for, it starts with a customer portal where our customers can raise co-location requests, give all their details. It contains then the co-location, the lease management with our landlords in terms something needs to adapt it, the site rollout, site inventorization until operation and maintenance, right? So we tried with one system to cover all the processes and the connected data. So we tried first then to create this harmonized high-level process framework, and then take this as a starting point for the IT transformation, for the agile sprints, and as an input. On that basis, then you can implement, really can bring it down to workflows, and people can create the user stories, how it shall work for them then in the workflows and with data in the system. So that was one learning. Another learning is, it was discussed before, not a learning, but let's say a recommendation. If you do something similar in a merger or demerger scenario like we have gone through, you need to accept that there are differences in the markets. Of course, if you do that from greenfield, you want to have one central system for different markets and countries, everybody working the same. But you need to take into account that you have some differences in the markets that can be due to legislation, building permits, whatever. You need to cater for these differences, right? So, but keep, let's say, the core of the system similar, because you, in the end, you want to have also cross-market dashboards, etc. You need a common data model, but you can also, to a certain extent, cater for local market specifics. As David said, change management is a very important point, as Nigel, as you just mentioned. You can build the greatest tool, right? If the people do not, let's say, adopt it in their daily work, it's a nice tool, but it does not kick in, right? And does not deliver the benefits you want to have. So pay attention on the market adoption from the beginning. Implement a change management that covers people and processes. You need to communicate. You need to tell people why we are doing. You need to tell them what you're doing. You need to take them with you. The agile implementation that we have gone through is that we build squads out of people and experts from all the markets, right? So that ensures people involvement from the beginning. So it's not something that is delivered to them, but it's something that is co-created with them, makes also another mindset. But don't underestimate the difficulty for the different user groups or markets to move from their current state or the old state of working, adopting the tool, and at the same time change the workflows and processes. It's a hard work, right? And you have to cater actively for this. Is nothing that happens automatically. And last but not least is exactly what I said. As I said, much more points and challenges that you are facing in such a transformation. But data quality and data completeness is a big topic. Huh? You can have the nicest systems, the best dashboards. If the underlying data is not reliable, you have a problem, right? And also a problem in doing the workflows in the system. So from the beginning on, keep an eye on the data, look what data is there, do quality measures on the data before you migrate it, do consistency checks. In the end, you need to live with the data that you get from the former systems, right? You cannot create, let's say, artificially data. You need to live with that, but you can control the quality before you migrate it, and then have plans to improve the data quality over time. So that's a bit what my experience is. Don't know whether David from the vendor side wants to add something, but these are a few major points I would recommend to others.
Yeah, I mean, I would only say that, you know, part of that change management is also informing the users of what's coming, right? I mean, I think from our approach, being a SaaS platform and a cloud-based solution, our view is, you know, we constantly add and upgrade functionality to the tool, and we do it very regularly. It's not legacy software that, you know, upgrades happen infrequently and changes take, you know, significant amounts of time and effort. From a SaaS perspective, it's constant innovation and constant upgrading. So communicating that to the users, letting them know what's coming, letting them know that their feedback is making it into the roadmaps, all of that kind of stuff helps, and helps them to kind of understand that, you know, if they're living with a suboptimal situation, it's usually not for that long of a period of time before the changes can kick in and things can move in a different direction, right? So I think that's important as well, is to just keep people informed about the fact that the type of solution you have, if it's able to generate results much quicker, it helps with people's adoption.
We've got a couple more minutes before the end of the session. Are there any questions? I think there's one come up in the chat for Dieter and Diego. Did you see any advantages in enabling individual markets to do their own localization for business process? That's allowing some latitude in some countries to deviate from, I guess, the core system. I think that question is asking.
Yeah, so my understanding is that to enable the markets to do their own localizations themselves, if that is the question, that could be an idea from my perspective. Let's say after we have done the major implementation, right? So in the first time implementation, as I said, we are going agile. All the markets are part of the agile squads that are defining the user stories that have to be implemented. And along this, we are also talking about in the squads, what also between the users, right, and the experts, what can be harmonized, what makes sense. So there's also needs to be a mindset of we need something harmonized. We are not doing completely different things, right? But we have some different situations in the market that we need to cater for. So discussion in the squads, what should be harmonized and what localizations need to be done. In this first time implementation, this is catered for in the agile squads. Later on, I see from my perspective an opportunity to leave it to the markets. I have to say in Vantage, IT is centrally organized. So we don't have, let's say, IT people in the markets. But as we are using low-code application platform, right, there might be an opportunity in terms of configuration. Let's say there is an opportunity to give that to the markets. On the other hand, you have to be cautious, right? Because in my history, and I have a long-standing history also in IT, I've seen when you are doing this and you're giving it free to the user communities to do their own things, to make their own development, configurations, etc. It can happen that very soon you get 8 in terms of when you have 8 markets, you suddenly after 1-2 years you see 8 applications instead of 1, and you get into the problem that you are even not able to have a cross-market report and dashboard, because you also need to have a good control of the data model and the data governance which is in there. That's very important. So on one hand, yes, I can imagine that for the future, but it needs a very good governance to avoid that that you scatter this centralized and harmonized application again completely.